Again, everyone, good morning to the majority of you, and good evening to some of you who are outside of Asia and listening in on the presentation. Certainly on behalf of PECC3, I and my fellow members of the Integrity Management Committee and the Young Professionals Forum appreciate the opportunity to talk to all of you about integrity. And I'm looking forward to the opportunity over the next half hour to share some thoughts about FIMS, which is the FIDIC Integrity Management System, and to build upon the notion of the trusted advisor that John Ritchie shared with all of us in the second presentation. So a brief introduction to the topics that I'll be sharing with you over the next 30 minutes. We'll talk about FIMS. We'll go through each of the 3 documents that are available for your use in helping you to build an integrity management system. I'll also want to share a little bit about a program that FIDIC hosted 10 years ago called the Pilot Program for FIMS. And Jorge and I played a significant role in using that program to help us identify how to build some of the later portions of the FIMS system, and I'll share how that can inform your approach to FIMS. And then finally, what I'm going to do is invite my fellow panelists for a short discussion on some of the topics related to the integrity management system and things that they've seen, so that you get the benefit of hearing from many of us about FIMS and how it could help you and your firms manage integrity and fight corruption in our consulting and construction industries. As I mentioned earlier, FIMS stands for FIDIC Integrity Management System. It's a tool that was developed specifically for consulting engineering firms. It's designed to protect you, your members, and your company from corruption, and to basically to fight the supply side of corruption, which would be the givers, as Jorge has often said in his presentations at FIDIC conferences. It allows you to mitigate risk, to get out proactively in front of potential problems. And should there be an issue where there is an act of corruption that takes place, it gives the company the tools to fight it and to solve it quickly without leaving you open to civil or legal liability. And then at the end of the day, it is the basis of an anti-corruption framework, and that it can be involved to a compliance system. And we'll talk about that in some of the later slides. So the next slide is talking about where FIMS came from. 20 years ago, FIDIC created something called the Business Integrity Management System. And the intention was, again, to provide consulting engineering firms with tools to fight corruption and to do business with integrity and with ethics. We learned as we got later to around 2008, 2009, that many firms in the FIDIC community were not adopting BIMs for a variety of reasons. So then we created part 1, which were the policies and principles upon which the FIMS is based. That then led to a later book, which came out 5 years ago and was informed by the pilot program process. FIMS 2 is the roadmap that you can follow, and it provides you with the tools to help build your own company's integrity management system. So the first 2 parts of the FIM trilogy are designed to give you guidelines to allow you and your companies to build an integrity management system that is scalable to your needs, for a small company of 5 individuals to a company of 5,000, and one that is tailored specifically to your risk profiles, to the types of work that you do, the markets that you're in, and the types of risks that your employees are likely to encounter as they go about executing their projects. So going back again to part 1, in the guidelines, we've defined a series of integrity management principles and FIDIC recommends that all firms adopt them. These include zero tolerance towards acts of corruption, bribery, extortion, fraud, or collusion, as well as avoiding not only conflict of interest, but the appearance of a conflict of interest. The foundation of a FIMS is based upon the Code of Conduct. And in FIMS 1, we talk about the importance of that code and why it is an important part of any integrity management system. And then, as I've said earlier, FIDIC highly recommends that each company create its own integrity management system. That code of conduct is one of the most basic and important pieces of integrity management. If you don't do anything else, we highly recommend that you have one. That document will define how you, your employees, and your leadership declare what the values are, your ethics are, and how you're going to conduct yourself with integrity in order to avoid and to combat corruption, as well as to move up the value chain to be a trusted advisor. In 2015, FIDIC published Part 2. These were the guidelines, as I mentioned earlier. This book contains the tools that you would need to help build the integrity management system that allows you to work and fight corruption and to keep you, your firms, and your employees safe. There are three primary areas that are addressed within the implementation guidelines. One of them is the notion of a critical project. You know, in the course of doing business, we often have projects that may be quite large in value. They may have some unusual risks, or we may be moving into an area of service that we've not done before. Or we're just exposing ourselves to an environment that is challenging and risky. And FIMS 2 provides you with some tools to identify those critical projects. Part of FIMS 2 is the notion of conflict of interest and identification of a firm's critical processes. Conflicts of interest arise when we are not necessarily perceived to be working in the interest of the project or acting in a trusted advisory role, or there may be something that's happened that would allow us to get a benefit or an advantage in the course of doing business that is not part of fair business, or that is provided in a manner that we should not normally have the ability to obtain. So avoiding conflicts of interest is incredibly important, and defining the critical processes to manage integrity is something that's also identified in FIMS Part 2. And then finally, the integrity procedures that your company will build. How will your members go about doing business? What are the types of activities that are allowable or that are not allowable? And then, you know, how do you document it? How is training taken care of? And then how do you improve the process? It's a 5-step process. There's the planning of the process, the actual prevention, the detection, the response, the documentation, and then the auditing, which then allows the process to be evaluated and to improve. And then finally, last year in 2019, FIDIC published FIMS Part 3. And what this guide allows you to do is to take an existing integrity management system, an existing FIMS, and to allow it to be compliant or adaptable to ISO 37001, International Standards Organization 37001, which is the anti-bribery standard. This is a system that is based on compliance. Your company can get certified as being compliant with this standard, but it's a standard that's applicable to all industries, not just the consulting sector or the construction sector. What it is focused on is the prevention of bribery and setting up systems in your company to comply with the anti-bribery standard. This is different than an integrity management system, as an IMS or a FIMS focuses on a proactive approach to managing corruption within a consulting firm, or a construction firm. This document here, or this diagram, I should say, provides you with an understanding of the differences and the similarities between FIMS and ISO 37001. So for example, FIMS is much broader in terms of corruption, whereas I've mentioned the standard is very focused on anti-bribery and the different aspects of anti-bribery. Where they overlap, and this isn't a critical junction, are things such as tone from the top, meaning how does leadership see the importance of prevention of corruption and of course anti-bribery? What are the steps that are taken by leadership to enforce and to provide the example to the members of the company? The code of conduct is a bedrock principle of both FIMS and ISO 37001. How your employees get trained, how it's documented. These are similarities that exist in our areas of overlap. And finally, there's a clear prohibition against bribery in both the ISO as well as in FIMS. Again, the standard is very focused on anti-bribery and the prevention of those activities, whereas anti-bribery is one of a much larger suite of proactive actions that can be taken by the consulting firm to prevent corruption, to act with integrity, and to give the members of your companies the knowledge that they can do the right thing and that they can act in a way that benefits the company, allows them to avoid corruption, and allows the company to successfully do business. That takes us to the pilot program. This was started 10 years ago, and it was a parallel effort to the development of the FIMS system. In the development of the program, we had 6 firms that agreed to test the principles and guidelines of FIMS 1 and to basically build their own FIMS and to help us understand some of the challenges that they would see in building it. The smallest firm was a South African firm, Asakeni, which was 15 people. The largest was a Dutch and South African firm, which was DHV, which was over 5,000 people. So we had a wide variety of inputs as part of that program. And it lasted 2 years. Again, the intent was to help us in the Integrity Management Committee and in FIDIC to find solutions and guidance for firms like those that all of you and all of us belong to be scalable to your needs, to tailor to your risks, and to be able to adapt over time as you expand your services, as things change in your marketplace, and to use integrity as the foundation of the FIMS. A couple of challenges that we encountered that may help you as you start to look at how you might build a FIMS in your company or improve the one you already have. Small firms have challenges. You just don't always have the resources and the number of people available to build a very robust system. So you have to focus and put your efforts where they're going to provide the greatest results. And as we said earlier, that code of conduct is extremely important. And that's an area where you should start first. Additionally, leadership has to set the stage and set the tone from the top and let everyone know how important it is. And then finally, everyone in the firm must agree to follow the code of conduct and agree to act in integrity. If they don't, then you run the risk of a breach of corruption or someone getting into an activity which could cause damage to your firm, whether legally, civilly, or professionally. Some companies have existing IMSs and they didn't see how building a FIMS could help them. In the development of the FIMS and in the 3 guidance documents that we've referenced, FIMS is designed to actually improve and to expand an existing integrity management system. It can fill in gaps in areas where you may not have the coverage and protection you need. And then, as I mentioned earlier, FIMS 3 actually allows you to develop a strategy to incorporate anti-bribery and a certifiable standard if that's something that would be important to your firm as part of an integrity management program. Another challenge that we saw in the firms in the pilot program is that some of the members of their companies were very suspicious of why a FIMS would be needed. They felt they couldn't be trusted, or that the leadership of the company didn't trust them. And they saw it as a problem and a threat. This is where the tone from the top of leadership becomes very important. Involving all of the members of the company in developing a FIMS, especially if the company is smaller, is a really good way to build trust in the system and to help everyone understand why this is important. Over time, as leadership sets the tone from the top and everyone understands the value of that code of conduct, integrity becomes part of the company culture. A couple of other challenges that some of the firms found is that their home countries may have very high risks of corruption. And they actually had to run the risk of losing clients, or some of them actually even fired their clients because the clients were too risky and really presented a serious challenge to their company's ability to avoid corruption. Additionally, we noted risks where individuals were involved in risky activities just as the course of doing business, and that there needed to be tools available for the company in order to not only protect those members of the firm, but also to protect the company should somebody get into a corrupt or an illegal activity and expose the company to damage. Again, the Integrity Management Committee has been focusing on the building and the advocacy of FIMS for over 10 years. It is a protective device to keep your people, your leadership, and your companies safe and knowledgeable that integrity is a good policy, it's good for business, and it will help your companies be successful. It allows additional people to be built into the decision-making processes of your firm, which again allows members to be protected. It helps you identify and manage critical projects. It helps you protect against an integrity risk and provide you with ways to document how those risks are managed. And it's a good way to do business. And again, it's something that we hope that you will seriously consider after having listened to the presentation and given some review of the FIMS documents. So the outcomes of the pilot program were successful, very successful for some firms, less so for others. And in going through the process, it really helped FIDIC to tailor the FIMS to allow companies of, again, of a size of 5 firms to 5,000 people to be successful and to protect their integrity. One success story was that one of the firms in the company or in the program adopted a zero tolerance to its integrity, to people not complying with its integrity management system, not only its clients, but its partners. And they found that this was very successful for them to not only protect themselves, but to be successful and effective in doing business. So the question I'd like to leave with you as we move into a panel discussion of FIMS is, how could you help your company develop an integrity management system? How will this be successful, and how will it protect you? Where can it help your company be more effective in your daily activities and helping you understand and deliver integrity as just a daily action of doing business? So with that, I want to give the opportunity to my colleagues, to John, to Jorge, to Jitendra, and Kozman, to just have a short discussion in the time we've got remaining about what you've seen as the importance of a FIMS, how we can make it successful, and where we can take advantage of integrity as a way of doing business. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen now so that we can see all of the speakers, so that we can see Jitendra, Jorge, Kozman, John, and please feel free to jump in. You know, where have others other speakers on the panel this evening, or this morning, I should say, where have you seen integrity management be important to your success as a company?
May I start, Richard?
Please.
Yeah. I see that many organizations are there which are already following one or different approach to deal the issue of integrity. And if we introspect and do a survey kind of thing, we'll find that most of the have defined their values and they are having some code of conduct. So as per the initial objective of FIMS, we find that they are at least meeting some criteria in terms of code of conduct. Going further, they can collaborate with FIMS, and then they may focus on strengthening in their employees how serious they should be about this code of conduct. And then next step will be to find the tools to really monitor and handle the kind of, their dilemmas, their complaints, and guide them time to time. So it will be a step-by-step approach. And first of all, the foremost important, like I said, will be to explore where the companies are standing, put them in different categories, and apply this one by one. Thank you.
Great, Jitendra, thank you for the thoughts. Jorge, Cosmin, or John, any thoughts from either of you regarding integrity management and where your companies are or your partners are?
I like to add that the message that has been delivered at this time is that integrity, as Mr. Tai was saying at the beginning of the opening of the webinar, integrity and quality builds a sustainable company. You cannot have a 41-year-old company in the developing world, such as yours, without quality and without integrity. Every year at the FIDIC annual conference, which will not be held this year because of the epidemic, projects are given awards based on the achievements of quality, integrity, and sustainability. These are the three main pillars for projects: quality, integrity, and sustainability. And FIDIC has been working hard, as you saw in Richard's presentation, to develop a set of tools that are ready to be utilized by companies, your company or other companies, and you can get the copies of these documents directly from FIDIC or from your association, from BECAS. So I think it's quite important that you understand that the sustainable quality, integrity-based system is fundamental for doing business. If you want to stay in business and grow your business, you have to adopt these pillars of consulting energy, which boils down into the trusted advisor concept that John was mentioning a while ago.
Great, Jorge, thank you. Please, John.
Yeah, one thing is interesting to reflect upon is that FIDIC introduced DIMS and then FIMS initially in response to the World Bank's crackdown on corruption. And FIDIC considers its relationship with the World Bank to be very important and continues to meet with World Bank representatives and discuss our initiatives. And for many years, FIDIC has tried to persuade the World Bank that they should give some special recognition to firms that have a FIMS. Because the FIMS, while the World Bank has a blacklist, why not have the opposite, have a whitelist? The World Bank said they were unwilling to do this because they had no way of determining whether a FIMS that a firm adopted really was real. And this shows the need to be careful that FIMS does not just become a paper exercise, that you do it for public relations purposes, and that it really isn't real. Because if you ever get into trouble with the law, you will find that a good FIMS or a good integrity management system will help you and will reduce any penalties and will help you deal with the problem. But if the authorities find out that you had a FIMS but nobody ever followed it, or that nobody paid any attention to it, then you're in bigger trouble than you would otherwise be. So I think that's an important thing to remember. Don't make it a paper system, make it a real system.
John, that's an excellent point. And Cosmin, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Yeah,
Richard.
Oh, Cosmin, go ahead, Cosmin.
Please, Jorge.
Go ahead.
I was saying that I was thinking what John was saying a few minutes before. I think it's very important not just to have some papers, some documents, and it's very important to respect everything that is written there, and to have a very strong code of ethics inside your company. Doesn't matter if it's the beginning of the company or you are a very advanced company. I think this should be from, let's say, because all of us are engineers, from the start of the company, you should have this implemented in your company. And you should train any of your new employee how to respect that code of ethics. I can tell you that, for example, we are working a lot in Europe, and we are working a lot with the European Bank. It's very important to respect that integrity and to respect the way for the European funds, how they are spent. So I think that how Richard was saying in the beginning, I want to mention that I think an integrity system is the backbone of a very healthy company.
Great, Cosmin, thank you. Jorge, you had a comment.
Yeah, keep in mind that all that has been spoken about in this morning has been about the supply side of corruption. The supply side of corruption, those that give money to others. And the corruption problem cannot be solved if it does not take into account the demand side of corruption. That's the givers and the takers, the clients and the companies. So FIDIC has been working on to develop a similar, which parallels FIMS, but for the demand side of corruption. But it's very important to understand that this morning, the tools that are available to you are for the supply side of corruption, which is just one part of the whole problem. The problem needs to be solved by taking into account the supply, the demand, and what I call the condoning side. That is the banks, the World Bank, the Asian Bank, the European Bank, etc. So we need everybody to be working together to solve the problem, which if you look at the statistics by Transparency International, it seems that these statistics have been collected for the last 15 years by a former member of the World Bank who founded a company. It's not a company, it's an ONG named Transparency International. And when you look at all these years, no progress has been made throughout the world. They publish a map with different colors: red, corruption; orange, highly corruption; and yellow, no corruption. And that areas, those geographic areas don't change year by year. You see the Scandinavians being clean, the Canadians, at least until last year, being clean, the Australians, New Zealand, and then the rest of the world is tainted somehow. So the problem is there. We have not making much progress, regardless of what our efforts are, because we have not been able to tackle the problem from the three sides: the supply side, the demand side, and the condoning side. So keep that in mind. We have to start somewhere, And when we're starting with the FIDIC FIMS set of tools, the toolkit, as we call it, in your companies, and you have to start somewhere, begin with FIMS 1, and begin, as Richard was saying, with the code of conduct. That is the core of the initiation of everything else.
Great, Jorge, thank you. So I have one other question to share with our panel, as I know we have a few minutes remaining before we move to the next presentation. In reflecting on the work that each of you has done in your companies with integrity management, what would you identify as something that was very successful that you were glad that either you or your company did, that you would encourage another company to investigate and find a way to incorporate it into their integrity management system? Go ahead, Jitendra.
Yeah. I was working in this organization, Tata Consulting Engineers. This is one of the very reputed consulting engineering organization in India. And I found that apart from implementing various tools to spread the culture of integrity and to control the activities, they had one thing that was very peculiar, and that was sharing the information pertaining to the complaint and action taken. So removing the name of the persons involved, removing the actual incidents which can give them an identification, it was made a general kind of report and shared across the employees that, look, this incident happened like this, and we received a complaint. The committee looked into these aspects, and finally this kind of decisions were taken. So what was the learning for me was that this gives a kind of feeling in the employees that, okay, my organization not only talks about these things, it also implements that. And I have a freedom to express my concerns and to interact with my top line management on the issues which I think are the issues. So that very much helps in, spreading the culture of what you are aiming to. Thank you.
Great, excellent example, Jitendra. John, Jorge, or Cosman, anything that any of you would like to add in terms of actions that you've seen that were very successful? John.
Yeah, I think that the comments by Jitendra, I just wanted to point out that Tata Consulting Engineers has a very, very good reputation and commands a high degree of respect in the industry in India, and could be characterized as a firm that aspires to be a trusted advisor. And so they are the kind of firm that you would expect to implement this kind of program. And unfortunately, there are not many companies in this world and in India that are like that. But you can see that a company like that can build a reputation and become successful.
Great, John, thank you. Cosman or Jorge, any thoughts or advice on this question?
Yeah. I guess we'll move on and wait for the Q&A at the end.
All right.
Yeah.
Very good. Well, we're close to 10 o'clock, so I appreciate everybody's thoughts on this informal panel. I'd like to bring the discussion on integrity management in the FIMS to a close and move to the next speaker in the next presentation. So